Welcome to another Ogre review. This review is for the anime My Roommate is a Cat, and we'll go through the different categories. I do list the major themes in order of importance and relevance to this anime. So the first theme you see and that we talk about will be the major one, and as we go through, they'll be less important and have less of an impact. And then we'll give a overall review and my final thoughts. First and foremost, this is a slice of life. There's no fantasy spellcasting in this thing. It's basically just your day-to-day events in the life of just one main character and his cat and a couple other characters that revolve around him. Unlike some of the postings that you'll see online that mentions this as a slice of life comedy, it is not. It is a slice of life drama. There are comedic aspects, and I guess on paper it probably sounds like a comedy. A guy who's adopted a cat and the hijinks that ensue, and certainly those themes are there. But there is a darker emotional overtone that goes throughout this anime, and it deals with some very heavy topics, which we'll get into. That first thing is grief. This is really about how to deal with grief and overcoming grief and moving on from a tragic event. So grief plays a major role in the whole 12 episodes and never really gets fully resolved, and you don't really move on to any happier place. So grief is primarily the driving force for the actions of the main character. A secondary, it is about pet ownership, the trials, tribulations, the challenges of pet ownership. So dealing with the cat, he learns a lot about pet care, how to treat pets, what pets do in their actions. So, pet ownership is another secondary theme throughout this. But it is ultimately a tale also of misunderstanding, because the anime is told from two different perspectives. It's told from the protagonist perspective, as well as you get, and not in every episode, but in a lot of the episodes, it switches and repeats the story from the cat's perspective. And it's often just misunderstandings between the two. They don't do the same actions for the same reasons that they see the other person doing things. So lots of misunderstandings between the pet ownership and his cat. It does eventually get to a point where they do know each other a little bit better, and those misunderstandings kind of go away. But for most of the story of the 12 episodes, you see a lot of those misunderstandings being major plot points. So it is essentially two stories in one. It's the story of the protagonist and him dealing with grief, and it's the story of the stray cat coming off the streets, dealing with his grief of losing some of his sisters and her sisters, and how, finding a comfortable place in a home with a human eventually, gives them comfort and resolves some of that. So it's grief really dealing from two different storylines from both the protagonist and the cat's perspective. The art style, I'd say this is pretty standard art style. I don't think it's really that bad. It does a decent job of telling the story, but it is not above average, I would say. So the art is pretty standard throughout. And my final thoughts on this one. Well, I do like to rate things in a top shelf, a watch it, or a skip it category. And really that depends on what the viewer is interested in. For me, this was a watch part of it. Didn't really find, that I wanted to watch a heavy story, particularly when it was billed as a slice of life comedy. But if you are really interested in hearing a decent story that deals with drama, grief, and you're interested in cats and pet ownership, this it could be very well for you. So if those topics are something that you like in anime, though the drama, the slice of life, then this is something you should definitely check out and give it a watch. All right, this has been another Ogre anime review. See you next time.